she is. Welcome. This is Miss 600.
It's great to be here today. And the one thing that I'm really glad is that I'm not following William Forreston's speech. That was unbelievable. And I read his book. Actually, when it first came out, a friend of mine told me, he said, you need to read it, you need to read it, you need to read it. And I'll tell you what, when I read it, it just knocked my socks off. I know it put me in a panic for about 3 months, but it was all good. Many of you are wondering, I'm sure, what in the world is a suitch? And some of you that know me know what it is, but my older son is named Seth. And when I opened up my YouTube channel, I had no intentions. I don't even think I had an intention of making a video. And so I just called it Suitch because my oldest son, Seth, when he was a little guy, I called him the Suitch. And we still call him Suitch. Now he's 13 and he is Suitch Senior, I'm Suitch Junior. So he does pop up occasionally on my videos. But today we're going to talk about, the title is weapons, but that is not what we're really going to talk about altogether. We're going to talk about self-defense. And we're going to look at some ways in a crisis situation to be able to defend yourself and to have the right mindset. Now, I read a book recently, and I want to highly recommend that book, but it was called The Coming Economic Collapse, and it was by Fernando Forfao Aguila. And you can look it up just Forfao. But one of the things that he wrote about the Argentine collapse in 2002 and gave specific things that actually happened in his country. And one of the things that was the biggest change in that country was that crime skyrocketed. Crime went through the roof. Now, the government wasn't around to protect you, but they sure were around to prosecute and arrest. So one of the things that we really need to start looking at, and generally is our society today, is to be able to defend yourself and to have the right mindset, because it's really important. All right, I sure was glad that Dr. Forreston talked about the Constitution, because that is the basis for our nation. It is the basis for why we do what we do, and it's why America is where she has been. And it's just incredible. But let me tell you one thing that the Constitution does. It guarantees us the right for self-defense. Now, self-defense is an inalienable right. It's a right that we have. It's a God-given right. The Bill of Rights is not giving us permission to defend ourselves. It's just stating the obvious. You have a God-given right to defend yourself. We were created in the image of God. Life is a gift, and we need to protect our lives, not only for ourselves, but also for our families and those that we love. And it's very important to stand and to live and to give what you are meant to give. Listen, each of us have a purpose in here. And I'm going to tell you, each one of the speakers that are here today feel like it's their mission to get the word out. That you guys, I'm not going to tell you what could happen, what might happen. We all have our own ideas. But there is a sense in the air that things are getting ready to really start happening to our country. There's a lot of telltale signs. So all I'm saying is you need to prepare. And the first thing you need to prepare with is self-defense. You need to have your self-defense in order. Life and property. Now, as preppers, we prepare, we put food back, we do things. My wife, she's a nurse, she's an RN, she's here today. She was with a friend of hers. Of course, being on YouTube, a lot of people know who I am. And see me around, and I really don't have a way to hide. And like David was saying, yeah, I'm on so many lists now, it really doesn't matter. And maybe, hopefully, it's a high-profile enough list to where it doesn't matter. But anyway, the thing is, she was at the hospital, and one of the other nurses asked her, said, are y'all buying up all these guns for the end of the world? And she laughed. She said, we've been buying guns. It wouldn't matter what we were doing. We would have guns around our house. I'm a gun fanatic. Now, the problem is, though, is a lot of you guys that are gun fanatics are heavy on guns, and you're low on food, you're low on water, you're low on basic needs. And I want to encourage you definitely to get a balance. Make sure that you have a balance. because you may have children, you may have grandchildren, you may have nephews, and they are going to need water, they're going to need food, and a firearm is just not going to be the answer. So that's the first thing you really need to do, is to make sure that you have a good balance. Now, one of the things that I'm into, because I am a prepper, this is why I'm a prepper. I'm not a prepper because I'm afraid of an EMP, even though there's a possibility of that. I'm not a prepper because there's an economic collapse coming. I'm not necessarily a prepper for that. I am a prepper because I want to be self-reliant. I'm going to tell you what, I want to be the man who is self-reliant, who provides for himself. Let me tell you what, this country was based on self-reliance. It was based on rugged individualism, and it was based on independent thinking. It's not about the nanny state. It's not about who's taking care of you. It's not about Bob Engel or Ingalls or wherever you buy your groceries, providing everything for you. People, those systems are so fragile. You need to be the person you need to be and take responsibility and become more and more self-reliant. Not self-sufficient. We can't do that. But we sure can be self-reliant, working together. Self-reliance is the key. And that's why I prepare my water. That's why I grow my food. That's why I do all these things. Why I take responsibility of self-defense on my shoulders. And one of the reasons why is because of the nature of man. And right here we have Cain and Abel. Listen, it's been from the beginning. Men will dominate other men. They will take advantage. They may not even want what you have. They may just hate you for no reason. If you ever get on any of my videos, you'll notice that there'll be a thumbs up and thumbs down. And it doesn't matter what video I do. There are guys that'll get on there and just thumbs down. Thumbs down. And we call it the thumbs down club. It's got kind of funny, really. They will they just don't, and they'll get on there and they'll make comments. There are people just out there that are for meanness. They're out there just to be mean. They're out there just to be rude. And you know what? They don't bother me any. I just block them. The thing is, there are people out there, though, that will take what you have. They'll kill your children. They'll take your food. Man is in a fallen state, and you have the responsibility to protect yourself. You have the responsibility. And so that is mainly what we're going to talk about. And then, from the beginning of time, those who were the strongest, those who were the biggest, they were the ones in charge. Might makes right. And the aggressor will take charge. He can do anything he wants to. And I'm going to make a good example of that. I'm going to tell you a story. And if you've ever been on my YouTube channel, I do a thing called Why I Own a Gun. And I have different scenarios. In fact, I'm going to tell a couple of those stories today. But I'm going to tell one here that I've never told before. And we moved... my wife's grandmother passed away a couple of years ago, and there was a nice house with some property, and my mother-in-law said, please come down here, and we sold our house in Brevard, North Carolina, and moved back down to Greenville. I'm from Greenville area, Greenville, South Carolina, and so we moved down, and I had already heard about this guy that would get on a moped, and he would follow cars down our road. Now, we live at the very end of a road, and my brother-in-law said he would intimidate. He'd get right beside him and he'd just kind of give him a mean scowl and yell at him. And he'd done that to my mother-in-law a couple of times. Well, I'd never seen this guy. So we moved down. We're having a big cookout one night. We'd been down there a couple of months. We're having a cookout. I'm sitting there grilling burgers. We had about 30 people from our church there for a graduation party. They were swimming. We were having a big time. About that time, my brother-in-law calls my wife and said, we're at the top of the hill. There is a guy on a moped circling us, saying he's going to kill us. And it was he and his 2-year-old daughter. So I got rid of my spatula. Maybe I should have carried it with me. I don't know. Spanked that guy. But left it, went running up the hill. And when I came around the front yard, I could see my brother-in-law with his daughter wrapped around his arms like this. And this guy, pretty good sized guy on a moped, saying he was going to blow his head off. And I could hear him screaming that at my brother-in-law. Now, I've known my brother-in-law since I'm that big. And I'm going to tell you something about me you may not know, is that I have a very high protective instinct. Very high. I hate bullies. Hate bullies. And man, when I saw that, I ran at full speed up that hill, yelling, "Hey, you So my brother-in-law starts running to me with his daughter. And my brother-in-law's not a slouch. He can take care of himself. But when his daughter was in danger, he was vulnerable. And sometimes people have the advantage, and this guy had the advantage. I go running up the hill. My brother-in-law's running this way. My brother-in-law just runs right by me and keeps going. The guy on the moped comes down. Then another guy on a moped pulls up, and I thought, I'm going to fight a moped gang. This is going to be the end of it. So my brother-in-law's running that way. I said, whoa, 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 whoa. So the guy comes flying down the hill, goes by me, and I try to grab him. And he gets to my brother-in-law and just starts yelling at him. So I went to him and I said, this is a Baptist convention area, isn't it? I guess I would. No, I'm just kidding. I had some things to say to this guy that I wanted to introduce his face to the pavement. Now, just to make a long story short, there was some exchange of words, and I finally corrected the situation. And honestly, without really having to do a lot of anything physical. But I was this close to this guy, and I was letting him know that we would not tolerate that where we live. Now, I'm going to tell you what, men, and sometimes even women, you better stand up for those you love. You better make a stand, and you better be who God made you to be. You protect your loved ones. So, anyway, he takes off. Had a couple of more minor incidences with this guy, which I met immediately, and from now on we haven't had any trouble. But I'm going to tell you what was funny. I was up the road, and I had different people come up to me and say, man, thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing that. And I said, you're welcome. And as I walked away, I thought, how pathetic that we would let someone intimidate us like that. Listen, don't allow yourself to be intimidated. That is not rugged individualism, it isn't self-reliance, and it isn't the way that Americans should be treated. Stand your ground. Stand up for who God made you to be. Now, one of the things that William Forreston said, which is one of my big mantras, is the better my neighbor is prepared, the better I'm prepared. And I'm going to tell you what, guys, I'm not telling you to run and go talk to your neighbor. But those who are looking, those who are open, if they'll be prepared, that's less that you've got to worry about. That's an ally on your side. And especially in self-defense, that can definitely be a situation. All right. Now, we're going to just briefly, I'm going to get into some really specific things, but I'm just going to talk a little bit about why you need to be, of course, don't pay attention to the naked barbarians up there. I think they do have loincloths, I'm not pretty sure, but man started out with a stick, and then men decided, hey, we found copper. We're going to make a sword out of copper. And he was in charge until the guy with the bronze showed up. And the guy with the bronze showed up, and he was like, whoop. So then the guy with the iron showed up and took care of the guy with the bronze. And so forth and so on. To the point that where the guy with the steel is still in control today. Technology is incredible, and you need to use technology as your friend. The United States Army is number 7 of the largest armies in the world. Listen, number 7. But yet we are the premier superhero. We are superheroes. Those men that are over there right now are superheroes. In Iraq, in Afghanistan, those are the guys. The guys right now that are facing off in Iran, those are our superheroes. And they are. Because they are protecting the weak. They're protecting the innocent. But, anyway, America has been the superpower. That means that there are 6 other nations that have larger armies. The key is technology. Technology is important. That's why you need to make sure that you use technology in your defense. And so, one of the things here, though, I'm going to show you a little thing that trumps technology. During World War II, the French were the largest, they had the largest army on continental Europe. That tank you see, a Samoa, and that tank was well advanced over anything the Germans had. So they had a larger army, they had better armor, they had the Maginot Line that was incredible. But let me tell you one thing the French had also. They had a spirit of defeat, and as the German armies pulled up to the Maginot Line, and of course eventually around it, France had already given up. They said, you know what, we're beaten. I'm going to tell you what, folks, I've seen this in this country, and it's making me sick, is that we feel like we've already been defeated. We feel like that the liberals have already taken over, and that we are headed towards socialism, and that it's all over. Don't you dare give up to that. You stand against liberalism, stand against socialism, because it will eventually take away your rights. I'm going to tell you what, man has to be controlled. He has to be controlled. It can either be self-control, which allows for us to be the country that we are, or it's forced control. We need to pick which one. I'm going to tell you what, I choose self-control. Don't be the victim. Here you see, the guy has the might, he has the weapon, this young lady is in danger. Now one thing I'm going to talk about here just real quickly is mindset. And that is having a mindset to never give up. Never, ever, ever give up. Just like Winston Churchill said. In many survival situations, people will give up. Soldier of Fortune did a study a few years ago, and they said that if you can survive the first 72 hours of any crisis situation, that your chances of survival shoot straight through the roof. Let me tell you what, you may be under a situation where you don't think you're going to make it, but for every minute, for every breath that you take, your chances of survival have just increased. Do not give up. You have loved ones, you have family that are waiting on you, depending on you to survive. Don't ever give up. Some of you are like, I'll never give up. You know what? In a bad situation, you can give up. You can just surrender. Look for the opportunity. Look for whatever it takes. Even though you think you may be against all the odds, don't ever give up. We're going to get into a little bit more of some how-to. And one thing I want to talk about here is the American Red Cross. They'll even say, here, you need to prepare. These are some things that you need to do. Homeland Security, they have their own little website, ready.gov, and they'll give you some ideas to put together some stuff. FEMA, all these different organizations. But the one thing they omit is self-defense. So where they leave off, I'm going to take on. So first thing you need to do is to be prepared. And this really is, this is more of how to have personal protection. And ladies especially. The ladies, I want you to take heed to this. And I'm going to apologize right now. I put this together last night after I got my PowerPoint, after I did my outline and everything. So there's no information here. I think they'll have the DVDs for sale if you want to follow this. Number one, be aware of your surroundings at all times. I have a friend of mine, in fact he's here today, and his wife was one of the buyers at Belk's, actually here in Asheville, at the Asheville Mall. And they had security cameras and everything. You would not believe the stories and what has happened in that parking lot that has never been reported. Unbelievable, incredible things that have happened to people. My wife worked at Mission before she went over to Transylvania County. I remember one night I was there, I dropped her off, and as I was leaving, I could hear a woman screaming down in the parking lot, down in the parking deck. Be careful where you are and where you go. Now, first off is, and one of the worst things to do is as soon as you come out of the mall, is to get your cell phone out and start texting. Now, how many of you have seen that? Walking down the mall, or walking down the parking lot, doing this, standing there on the corner, doing this. Let me tell you what, you are vulnerable. You don't be aware of your surroundings. You cannot be aware of your surroundings in a situation like that. You need to be very aware. Now, number two, when you're walking through a parking lot, walk down the middle, equal distance between the cars. Let's say you're walking by the car. Here I am, here you go. It's easy to pull you in. Listen, criminals will look for the easy victim. Just like the lion, when he's going after the antelope, he's going to look for the weak, he's going to look for the one that's separated. Make sure you stay in the middle. Number two, go ahead and have your keys out. Some of you go ahead and have your keys in your hand like this so you can like put it up somebody's head. But the thing is, as you're walking, have your keys out. And when you get to your car, that is honestly when you're the most vulnerable. Unlock, get in, zip, you're in. But even way before you ever find a parking spot, make sure, you know what, when I come out of here, is this going to be dark? Is this a secluded area out of the way? And these things are just personal protection things. But one couple of things that Of course, you know, if you happen to have some kind of personal protection, pepper spray, you have a CCW, you have a knife. A good friend of ours, in fact, she was down at with my kids this evening, last evening, staying over, and she said the other week, she was at a parking lot, and as she was walking, a guy started going, hey, 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 hey. And when he got over to her, he said, I need some money, give me some money. And she said, poof, pulled out a knife. He said, get back. You know what he did? He got back. And I don't blame him, because the look she had in her eye when she said it, I thought, whew, I'm back. Okay. Now, a couple of things. If you are approached and you are attacked, do not just scream. How many of you have been in a parking lot and heard screams and just really not paid attention to it? You just, you know what, I think it's kids. I think it's just kids playing. If people are accustomed to that, they might not necessarily scream. Start yelling, stop, stop, leave me alone. Have commands out that there is something desperately wrong with what's going on around you. You need to have that going. Okay, now the other thing is, if you're ever approached and somebody says, give me your wallet. Unless you're me, because I ain't ever giving anybody my wallet. Take your wallet out and do this. Throw it over that way and you run that way. Take your pocketbook, toss it, and run. Make them take a choice. Don't, and then stand there. Take it, throw it, run. Now, number 3 about action is that you have a 90% chance of not being shot when you're running away from an aggressor zigzagging. You only have a 90% chance, I mean a 10% chance of actually getting hit anywhere on your body. And any of you guys that have really shot a lot with handguns especially know that that is true, because it's difficult enough to get on target already. But if you're running and zigzagging. So those are just some things about your personal protection. Now we're going to get non-lethal options. You definitely, pepper spray is really good. My buddy, one of my Bible guy, and Dave Mahoney, super conservative, great Christian guy. And one of the things he told me, because I asked him, I said, what is the best thing to have for non-lethal? He said, pepper spray. And I said, man, that was quick, you know it. He goes, I'm going to tell you what. He goes, I've been shot with pepper spray, I've been tased, I've had all the different things done to me. He goes, pepper spray is the worst, and then when you go home to take a shower, it all comes back. Pepper spray, make sure though you get a good quality pepper spray. I know it's very tempting to get some of the cheap pepper spray at the gun show, but I would suggest getting something, you know, a little better. In fact, a good friend of mine, well actually he's not a good friend of mine, he's one of our doctors, and my wife knows him very well, but he was in Alaska with this friend of his, and they were hiking, and as they came, his friend got up ahead of him, and all of a sudden his friend started screaming like crazy. And so the friend ran up, and when he got there was a grizzly bear had this guy and had him by the head. So he grabs his grizzly pepper spray and he sprays the grizzly. And the grizzly he didn't even budge. He didn't even change. He finally took a stick and beat him off. And they did get away. The guy that was attacked actually started his own grizzly repellent pepper spray. So, you know, he found the value of really good products and not found out the hard way. So it's really good to do that. All right. Of course, the next thing is a knife. And a knife is a very important, it is the #1 survival tool, but it's also a great tool to have, a great defensive tool. Now, one of the things about having a knife, and a good friend of mine told me this one time, and I will never be without a knife when I'm out and about. And once I tell you this, I hope this will inspire you to be the same way. A friend of mine who is in law enforcement now, but when he was a young man, he and his cousins were playing. His cousins were older, and they would always do things to him. Well, they tied him up in a tree. So here he is, tied up into a tree. They left him. They said, see you later. They just left. Well, as he was trying to get out, he slipped and he caught the rope around his neck. And as he's hanging there, he remembers he has a knife in his pocket. And he pulled it out and he cut that rope. Listen, a knife can save your life in situations where you might not think so. Keep a knife on hand, and it's also a great self-defense tool, especially where you can't carry firearms. A knife is very important. Okay, the handgun. Now, I really want to get to this in particular because we talked about technology, and technology is the height of technology is where I want to be as far as my self-defense. That's where I want to be. So, God made man, and Sam Colt made him equal. And I'm going to tell you what, you can take a 90-pound female, nothing against that, ladies, and didn't mean to say anything specifically, you can be a 90-pound guy, but you come across a 240-pound linebacker that wants to do you harm, it's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. It is the great equalizer. You are on equal terms. In fact, if the woman has a pistol and the man does not, the woman is superior. Or the weaker person is superior to a big guy. And that's one of the things for the first time in history that we can have the great equalizer. We can be completely free. Now, and because of that, I got another story to tell you. Well, this is something that's kind of interesting. This little girl was at home from school. She was, I believe she was 13. She may have actually been a little younger than that. In Texas, she was at home from school. She was sick. Two men broke into her house. They were illegal immigrants. They came into the house. She was upstairs. She came out. There they were. One had a knife. The other had a .45 automatic pistol. And they started coming up the steps. Well, she grabbed a shotgun and pointed it at them. Well, guess what? She was a skeet champion. She killed them both. The only sad part about that story is that the .45 automatic that the one guy was holding was the next door neighbor who he killed to get. So she did the right thing. I'm going to tell you something, folks. Right now we're kind of facing some changes with self-defense, considering this deal down in Florida, the Zimmerman, Trayvon Williams thing, and they're looking a lot of states, in fact South Carolina's looking at it right now, to relax this stand your ground policy. If your state's doing that, you better start contacting them now. Because if we want to defend ourselves, we do not need to be second-guessing ourselves. And we're going to talk about the legality too in just a minute, but we're going to go on from here. Okay, mindset. There we go. That is the mindset. You know what? There is no doubt that she wouldn't use that on somebody. May not even be legitimate. I tried to find one with her shotgun because that's always my favorite. But Granny, she had the right mindset. So I'm going to tell you a little story that happened to me, and this was a couple of years ago. We had been out of town. We lived in Brevard. Before, so we lived a few years ago. We lived in Brevard, lived out, kind of rural, and had a really, in fact, our house the driveway came back behind it, and our front yard met with an older lady that lived over here, and right off of 64. So we'd been out of town. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I had just come in. I was hauling in suitcases. I laid them down. Our little girl was 2 years old. And because we had gotten home, she kind of got woke up. I just remember her running around. Well, after I got everything in, I sat on the couch in the living room, and I looked out. We had a big bay window, and when I looked out the bay window, a car was driving through our front yard. This is 1 o'clock in the morning. Driving. Had already driven through my neighbor's yard. Now was driving through my yard. So when I had walked in at the last, I took my .45 automatic and I set it up on the mound. Well, it was still sitting there, so I didn't have to go get it. So I walked to the door, I grabbed the .45, hold it down here. We had one of those screen doors with the half and half with metal and screen. And I opened the door, and there stood this guy with his long hair, and he was like, you could tell he was out of it. And the car was pulled right up to the front steps. And I mean, it was like 10 feet away. So he couldn't see the gun. And I said, hey, can I help you with something? I'm like, hey, how are you doing? Can I help you with something? He said, I'm looking for Jamie. Well, the problem is we got into an argument that Jamie wasn't there. I kept saying, Jamie's not here. Jamie said he's going to be here. I said, Jamie's not here, dude. I said, get off my front porch. Well, Jamie said he's going to be here, man. And so then he started getting kind of more aggressive. And so after a while, I said, get off my front porch, man. I said, go. I said, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. Well, Jamie's supposed to be here. So I just stepped back. And when I did, his eyes in that drunken stupor looked down at that .45. Wouldn't point it at him. Had it down. I said, "Get off my front porch." And he just stood there and looked at me. At that moment, there wasn't a doubt in my mind I was going to blow him right off that front porch. Didn't want to. Last thing in the world I wanted to do. But my daughter and my wife are way more important than Jamie's friend. And so, as I stood there, he looked at me, then he looked back at me. I said, "Now!" And so he turned around, he stumbled off. What I didn't see before was that there were 3 other adult men in the car. Now, I had a friend of mine ask me one time, he said, "Don, what?" He was from New Zealand. He goes, "What's the love affair with guns? What do you Yanks have, this love affair with guns?" I told him that story, and I said, "Logan, if I would have had a golf club, a baseball bat, I don't care. And I've taken martial arts for years. But when you have 4 determined men, I'm going to tell you what, it would have been hard-pressed for me to keep them away. I will always, Lord willing, possess a firearm for protection because it is the great equalizer." And as we've noticed, the history of our nation is the same thing. Listen, if they would have gotten those muskets before our men got there and emptied those arsenals, the American Revolution might have been different. But because we had the same arms. Listen, I own an AR-15. In fact, I own a whole slew of them. And the reason I do is because our military and most of our police own AR-15s. It's just a great equalizer. And it's good to have. But even just the presence of a gun deters 90% of the crime. Okay, self-defense. It's your responsibility, and even, let me start that over. Self-defense is your responsibility. The police have no legal precedent to defend you, to keep you protected. According to the Supreme Court, they do not have to protect you. They don't have to. Now it says serve and protect. And I'm going to tell you what, I am a huge supporter of law enforcement. And thank goodness they're out there. I call them the thin blue line. And I have a lot of guys that watch my channel in law enforcement. I tell them, "Man, I thank you for everything you do." But the police are minutes away when seconds count. When seconds count, police are minutes away. You call 911. There's nothing worse than hearing a 911 call and hearing someone on the operator talking and the person is being killed and the operator is just sitting there listening, completely hopeless and helpless to do anything. Responsibility is that is your responsibility. Okay. Now for the fun part. We're going to talk about the top 5 firearms that you should own as a prepper and as someone that wants to take care of their defense. Number 1 is a good handgun for self-defense. Now some of you are like, "What?" And I'm going to explain. If I could only have one gun, just one, no other, that was all I could have, it would, by far, it would be a handgun. Number 1, it's a great self-defense tool. Number 2, it can be used for concealed carry. Number 3, I can travel with it. Number 4, I could walk from here down the road all the way to 40 and with it on my body and no one would know it. I can't do that with a rifle, can't do it with a shotgun, I can't do it with a long gun. So in a real serious situation, let's say that something happens, let's say it's an EMP, and I say you're sitting on the side of the road and you grab your pack. Well, I've got my AR-15 stuck in the back. I'll tell you what, you start heading down the road with an AR-15 or a 12-gauge shotgun, and the police are going to be looking, or other people are going to give you some serious looks in different types of situations. So I would highly, I'm not telling you not to take your AR-15 on your truck either, not that I would do that, but make sure have a good handgun. If all you've got is a shotgun, you need to consider a handgun. Most states allow you to go from even if you don't have a concealed carry, allow you to go from your car to a motel room with a gun. Because there are so many problems with that area. Travel, all those different things. So the number 1 thing that I recommend, highly. Number 2, I recommend with a handgun, if you only have one, is to have a common caliber. Very common caliber. I've got friends that have guns and they have some funky calibers. Number 1, ammo availability. Number 2, the cost. And number 3, in a tough situation, in a crisis situation, ammo will dry up. Number 2 is a shotgun. Now, I'm kind of back and forth with this one on shotgun and long gun, but just in your standard everyday life, having a shotgun is the best home defense weapon you can own. It is the best. Typically, if I hear a bump in the night, I do grab my pistol, but I'll leave my shotgun there with my wife. So a good shotgun is really important to have, and there are a lot of different types that you can have. In fact, I'm not going to get into all situations. I'll just tell you though, my pistol is a Glock, and that's just what I have. But I'm going to tell you, whatever you do choose, and we'll get a little bit more into training, because that's very important as well. But you need to know that weapon. If you get a shotgun, you need to take it out and shoot it. Just like David was talking about earlier, Southern Prepper. Sees a guy there with an AR-15 and 2 cases of ammo, no, I hadn't shot it yet. Get out, and it's critical that you shoot your weapon. 22 rimfire, that's number 3. If I could only have 3 guns, it would be a handgun, it would be a shotgun, and it would be a 22 rimfire rifle. And it could be a rifle or pistol, but it would be 22 long rifle. Ammo's cheap, super cheap. You can train with it, train with it, train with it. You can also use it to hunt. So a 22 long rifle is really key in a tough situation. Number 4 is some kind of tactical carbine. Now, I'm going to stop here just a second because there are a lot of different options. The AR-15, of course you have the AK-47. You could have an FAL, which is in .308. You can have an H&K if you've got, you know, $10,000. You could have an M1A. There's a lot of .308s, Kel-Tec. There's just a lot of different types of guns out there. But I'm going to tell you my philosophy. And with you, and I have AKs. I have a lot of that. But you know, it's funny. I have people on YouTube. They'll get in touch with me and they'll say, "Look, can we see your whole gun collection?" I'm like, "Are you crazy?" No. They'll say, "How many guns do you have?" I'll say, "Not enough." The AR-15, and this is a big argument, the AR-15 and the AK-47. Love the AK-47. In fact, this weekend we were at a big carbine class, doing a big shoot, and a guy took his AK and he threw it in the mud and he jumped up and down on it, you know, and he was doing all this. He picked it up. He had a little trouble with his magazines, but after a while, I think it was just going like crazy. Yes, AK-47s are super durable. They are incredible weapons. They can handle, they're tough, they're durable, they can handle about anything. There is a myth that the AR-15 is finicky and fragile, and let me tell you what, guys, unless you got a bad egg, in fact, I've got one, I've done this on purpose. I've got one of my AR-15s I have not cleaned in 15 years. And I took it to the carbine class and shot 700 rounds through it. Didn't have one malfunction. Taking care, and I do kind of clean it just some off because I don't want to build up too much debris. But let me tell you, I'm going to give you a couple of plugs. If you have the AK and you're dedicated to it and you have ammunition for it, which I love the AK, I'm not going to talk you out of it. But if you are looking for a gun, I want you to think about a couple of things. Number 1, like David said, ammunition. There are millions and millions of rounds. Listen, 5.56 or 223, it's here now, before the shooting starts. It'll be here while the shooting's going on, and it'll be here after the shooting stops. 223 or 5.56. Magazines, parts are everywhere. So, just my plug. If you've got an AK-47, chances are you're not going to need parts for it. So, just make sure you've got plenty of ammunition. 308, oh, and I want to say something about 308. I have 308s, I love them. They're long-range weapons. You're talking about an AR-15 about 300 yards. You're talking, this, not that size actually, that'll actually go farther, but the standard 16-inch barrel, you have a 300-yard range. With the AK-47, you're dropping it down a little bit to about 250. The 308, though, will reach out and touch someone. If you have an accurate rifle, you can really get it out there. But the downside to the 308 is that it's heavy, heavy, heavy. Still like it. So if you're a real man, you can carry 308. If you're a wimp like me, you carry 223. That's all right. All right. Here's the 308. This is my 5th firearm to home, the number 5. And that would be a high caliber, decent caliber, not necessarily bolt action, but something that can really reach out and touch someone. That can get out. Or a deer, elk, whatever you're hunting. Higher caliber, The ballistics are great. You can use it for hunting, but also, if I have a shotgun, and my shotgun, even with slugs, can only get about 100 yards out of it, and he's got a 308, and he's 500 yards off, it's like David was saying, you're going to have to close the distance. 308 rifle, 30-06, whatever you have, even hunting rifles. Now, for me personally, I always opt for military calibers. 308, 5.56, 9mm. Listen guys, I'm a huge 1911 fan. Huge 45 ACP fan. Love them. My favorite. Used to shoot a lot of competitions with 1911s. But I'll take a Glock 9mm, hands down, because that ammunition is available everywhere. Not that 45s that scarce, but you'll find 9mm, and in a real crisis situation, and that's just my plug. If you want to go for 45, just stock up your ammunition. Okay, and speaking of which, ammunition. I recommend 1,000 rounds of ammunition per firearm. 1,000 rounds is a good number to have. If you have a 223, if you have an AK-47, if you have an SKS, if you have an M1 carbine, 1,000 rounds of ammunition, you really need to at least have that. Now, if you have more than that, I'm not going to fuss at you. But if you have less than that, you really need to think about it. And let me tell you the way to do it. Not necessarily, because sometimes it's tough. When you're a prepper, you are budgeting. You are going. And I'm going to tell you, it gets tough. It gets expensive. What I do is, when I go to Walmart, I go down there to the sporting goods section, look around, and I buy me a box of 12 gauge. Next time I'm in there, I buy a couple of boxes of 22. Next time I'm in there, I buy 9mm. When I go to the gun show, about 100 rounds of that, 50 rounds, just a little bit all along. And then before long, all of a sudden you look, and there you are. You want to know how to store your ammunition? I did hear that earlier. I had some old reloads that I had reloaded when I was doing that real heavy in competition. Took a break for a while. I had them in an old metal box. It was real airy in a building that got hot, cold, hot, cold. Took those rounds out. Boom, 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 boom. Now, optimum, keep them dry and cool. Best thing to do is to get the old ammo cans for sure and put them in there. But really, other than that, you're good. Ammunition sealed, it's watertight. I highly recommend reloading as well. It's a lot of fun, it's less expensive, and in a critical situation, it could be a good source for ammo. Training. Training is just super important. I go to a range, there's a nice range down from our house. It's a public range. It's the Pickens County Range in South Carolina. It's free, just a beautiful range. Love going down there. In fact, Skinny Medic is coming up in just a minute. He and I go often, sit out there at the bench, fire off some rounds, go to the handgun farm. But I'm going to tell you what, you've got to get some training. I know there is a guy here that's doing some training. I just got back from the South Carolina Gun School. We did an AR-15 class, and I'm going to tell you what, learning how to fire that weapon, drop your magazine, clear malfunctions, know what you're doing, it's invaluable. It's invaluable. Of course, I did have a guy tell me on my YouTube channel, he goes, man, aren't you a little old to be doing all that? I said, man, I'm not the old folks home yet. And I said, but how old do I need to be to stop protecting my family and protecting myself? Folks, you're never too old. Never too old. See it all the time. Elderly man, elderly woman at home, intruder comes in. Thank goodness they've done their homework. They shoot the guy and stop something really terrible from happening. Training is important. Learning how to shoot, having people to instruct you. Seeing what you're doing and them saying, you know what you're doing, you need some work here, you need some work there. That's me knelt down right there. That was after a day at the Mud Fest. It was muddy and it was a mess, but you know what? We had a great time getting in and learning more. And let me tell you a couple of things about training. It will build your confidence, it'll build your proficiency, and it will help you to be very familiar with your firearm. One last thing about training is dry fire. If you have a center fire pistol, you can dry, especially anything modern. Some of the revolvers, if it has a revolver and the hammer has like the firing pin on the hammer, it's not really good to dry fire. If you have a 22, you really shouldn't dry fire 22s. But most of your center fire weapons, It is critical. You will advance so fast if you'll dry fire. You need to be extremely careful when you dry fire and make sure the gun is unloaded. In fact, be almost anal about it, making sure that it's unloaded, check it, check it, check it. And always keep it pointed in a safe direction. But I'm going to tell you what, it is really incredible to be able to pull that trigger and watch how it functions every time you do it, and it will really help you to get very familiar. The guy that runs Front Sight out in Las Vegas, he said that is how he became a grandmaster. He didn't always have time to go out to the range. Plus, it's super cheap to do that. That is one way that you get to really know your firearm. Okay, be responsible. Drunks with guns, you loot, we shoot. Okay, I like that. Not necessarily the drunk part, but I think that's really funny. And that's really the way it was meant to be. But let me tell you something. If those guys had gotten into some kind of altercation, that could come back to haunt them. You need to be responsible. I want to explain something. If we have an SHTF situation, it doesn't mean that you don't need to be concerned about law. I know that a lot of the Germans in those concentration camps, those guards, they thought, you know what, there's no reason, there's nothing going to happen to me. And they did whatever they did, but they found there was a day of reckoning. Be careful. There can be a day of reckoning. Even law enforcement is subject to the law. I heard just recently there was a situation at Katrina where an officer had been fired on, and some officers were responding to that. They jumped out of a van. They thought that the shot had come from some bridge, and there were a bunch of people just walking across the bridge, and the police opened fire on those people. They're in jail. Those police are right now. Being careless, not following the law. You need to follow the law. Not only because you may go to jail, but because it's the right thing to do. Our laws are sometimes our justice is hurting a little bit, but our laws are made to protect the weak, to help the innocent. Even though it seems like now it's got more to protect the victim, but that's another subject. Obey the law. This is what you don't want. Even now, obey the law, people. Obey the law, because what happens when you do something and you break the law and you become a felon, you have voided the Bill of Rights for you. Be careful. Make sure you do the right things. And this is the ultimate Homeland Security. This is my type of Homeland Security. Fighting terrorism since 1492. Well, you know. I'll tell you this, just to backtrack on that. I think great-great-great-grandfather was Cherokee Indian. And I'm glad that the Europeans came. Because as much as that appeals to me, I think I'd much rather be wearing this. So, but I'll tell you what, some people, I get questions every once in a while because I am vocal about my Christian faith. They'll say, now how can you own a gun and be a Christian? And then I just say, Luke 22:36. Then said he unto them, but now he that hath a purse, let him take it, and likewise his scrip. But he that hath no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one. That scripture is the basis for my religious freedom, that I own a weapon. And if anybody tries to take it, they're taking away my religious right. Jesus commanded me to go out by this, and this is my sword today, so that's what I'll use if I ever have to. So anyway, please be safe. Take defense. Self-defense is your responsibility. It is your responsibility. It's each of your responsibilities. And you need to take it seriously and be active politically, standing up for our rights. And then if it ever comes down to us having to be our own Homeland Security, do your best and thank God